Ladies and gentlemen, today we have SAS legend Robin Horsfall. Robin, it's been turbulent times. You're being attacked by American and Russian trolls on your social media posts. Your traffic's down about 9 times. We've had the whole hate speech laws introduced into Scotland. We've got this dynamic UK which is supporting Ukraine, but then again we have some internal policies by our government that is making it almost like 1984 here. So anyway, how's it going?
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, it's not my intention to upset everybody in the world, but if somebody doesn't stand up and start banging the table, then it's inevitable that we're all going to be oppressed and suppressed and upset and angry and sitting in back corners of pubs moaning about everything and doing nothing about it. I'm very good at upsetting the American right wing. I'm very good at upsetting the British left wing. I'm very good at upsetting the Russians because I keep supporting Ukraine. And I mean, at one time in the past when I was leading the Northern Ireland Veterans Movement, I was called the Veterans Gobshite. So, so I'm always upsetting somebody, but trying to be sensible at the same time.
It doesn't make sense that you would really upset the American right wing because you are, from all intents and purposes, a conservative guy, believes in hard work. You know, what's going on there?
Well, I'm a liberal humanitarian. I think if I had to put a label on myself, and I see the world as the vast majority of the people in the middle getting on with their lives, feeding their kids, paying their bills, driving their cars, worrying about their taxes, and not getting involved in politics. And at the extreme ends, you've got what people refer to as the extreme left and extreme right, the extremists who are getting all the profile. They're getting all the power. They're coordinating. They're getting into positions of power, and then everybody in the middle is going, "How the hell did that happen?" And that's a big problem. How do we get the moral majority stuck in the middle, the ordinary working people again, motivated into politics and starting to do something about it?
It does seem like a pattern throughout history where the silent majority can be led, like the children in a Pied Piper, off the edge of a cliff into abyss. We've seen this in Russia, where people are just don't want to stick their head up because they see people that do get stick their head up getting taken out by like the mafia and things like that. So, what can we do to society to change that to make the silent majority less vulnerable to basically tyranny?
Yeah, I don't think there's an easy solution. We've lost the institutions that bonded us together as communities over the last generation. We've lost our unions, we've lost our church, we've lost our nationality, we've lost our belief in belonging to something that unites us. And in those organizations, there were always leaders that led us in what we believed was the right direction. Now we've got a situation where there's no community leadership, there's no institutional leadership. It's all seems to have been undermined. Our school teachers are not allowed to have political views. Our people in corporations and people in local authorities are not allowed to get involved in local politics, which is peculiar to me. Some of the best people in society are actually told they're not allowed to have political views or engage in political programs because they work in schools, because they work in companies, and their social media is actually monitored by their company to see if they like or dislike something that the company disapproves of. And what has happened is we've allowed extremists to actually infiltrate into our society in the United Kingdom. Let's not talk about Russia so much. It's very convenient to say everybody else does it, but we've got it in our own country, in the United Kingdom at the moment, where we've got political commissars that are hiding behind the diversity, equity, and inclusivity laws, who are oppressing everybody in society and saying, you cannot think that. You cannot behave that way. You cannot say that. You cannot write that. You cannot have an opinion that is different to the one that we're imposing upon you. And that's dangerous and that's wrong. It's sinister. It's sinister in its effect. And we've seen the most extreme version of it appear in Scotland recently, but it's already there in in Wales and England as well. It's not something that is specifically different from Scotland. It's just that Scotland have taken it one step further, and everybody's keen to blame the SNP. And that, yes, they are the party in power, but they're in coalition with a group that they or have been in coalition with a group that they need the support of, which are the Greens. And Green is an extremely peculiar group because they're the ones they're the extremists that are pushing forward this dystopian agenda onto our people. And people are suddenly discovering that they're getting arrested for saying or thinking something that they've said or thought all their lives. And that's dangerous and it's worrying and it's got to stop. It really has to stop. And it's about time that the moral majority stuck in the middle, worrying about their kids, start worrying about their kids a bit more and where they're going to in the future. Because if we don't start having some leadership, if we don't start getting out there and banging the table and marching the streets and saying, no, we're not having this, then it's not going to be too long before you're going to have microphones under the table in McDonald's listening to what you're saying.
So I've been spending a few weeks in Scotland, and everybody that I've talked to about this hate speech laws, and I think they spent £60,000 on the advert on that, which it could have funded a couple of people on the beat, policemen, for like a whole year. They all think it's ridiculous, but the thing is, most of them won't go and put their neck out like you did on LinkedIn, which I'll just quote a little bit of your post, if you don't mind. You said, I hate crime laws. Is that a crime? I hate diversity, equity, and inclusiveness laws because they achieve the opposite of what they claim to achieve. They do not encourage inclusion or equality. They exclude anyone who is perceived to be in the majority. And I'll just leave the post up there to see, but that really got a lot of attention, 700 likes, 164 comments, and just so many people there that are basically praising what you said as like, thank you for giving them the courage. And that, you never know, that could be like a little butterfly effect, because they see a bit of yourself, putting yourself out there, risking your account deleted by LinkedIn, by the LinkedIn Stasi, whatever you want to call them. And then, we need some pushback, because if you take this to logical conclusion, having the idea of microphones under your desk, which we actually do with our mobile phones and whatnot, but like something that was like compulsory. You can imagine some kind of like device that monitors people's emotions and things like that. That's the logical conclusion of like tyranny, where, we see things changing so much that you would never imagine 20 years ago. But then, you think 20 years into the future, we could be continually monitored for even thought crime,
Well, this is a form of tyranny where you can't lean over the fence and talk to your neighbor and voice your opinion for fear that neighbor or the person listening out the window or the children who are sitting playing with their balls aren't going to cross and repeat it to somebody else, who are then going to tell it to the police, who are then going to come to your house, and they can't have a chat with you about it. They can't say, oh, we've been told to come round and talk to you about this. They are actually obliged to handcuff you and take you to a station to be interviewed, so that you on what is essentially a hate crime, and then decide if it's a non-criminal hate crime, and then record a non-crime. And that's it's absolute insanity and madness. And yet people are going along with it. People are going along with it because everybody feels helpless. Everybody's an individual. There's nothing bonding the Scottish people together. There's nothing bonding the English people together, if there is such a thing anymore. People together. They're all being divided and ruled over. Don't speak up. And it's not the law that's actually going to punish people. It's the process that goes into getting you to a situation where you're frightened, you're handcuffed, you're taken to a station, you're interviewed. And then they decide, oh, we're not going to do anything. You haven't done anything wrong, Mrs. Morgan. But what we're going to do is we're going to record this. So be careful. You don't want to do this again, do you? You don't want to go through this process again of being embarrassed in front of your neighbors, terrified, thinking you're going to go to prison for 7 years for speaking your mind, for having an opinion about something. And the people that it affects worst are the people that are least eloquent, the people that are not aware of the law, the people that maybe just go to the pub and have 2 weeks in Benidorm every year, play darts and talk to their mates, And all of a sudden they're vulnerable because they're not necessarily eloquent enough to turn around and say, no, I didn't say that. No, this isn't what I meant. And they'll get arrested and they'll get convicted. And all of a sudden, the 8,000 people that have complained in the last week are going to find that there's 8,000 people lined up for court. And how the court's going to deal with that? So nobody should accept a caution. Nobody should accept any version of guilt in this. That nobody should even talk about it. They should just say, "Here's my name. Here's who I am. I didn't do anything. You prove it. Take me to court." Overwhelm the courts, overwhelm the government, overwhelm the expense, and then force the people with your votes this year. If there's a vote, which there should be in Scotland, because you're going to have another unelected leader, and change it for somebody that's going to represent you and represent your feelings, rather than this choice between the extreme anti-English of the Scottish Nationalist Party and the extreme Stalinism of the Green Party. You've got to get off your seats and start doing something. Where are those amazing Scotsmen and those amazing Scots women, those leaders that can get out there and bang the table? What's wrong? They're frightened. They're frightened of being accused of being neo-Nazis. They're frightened of being accused of being communists. They're frightened of being accused of everything, because the power of social media is being controlled now by people in political power. They've got the voice. They've got the media. They've got the message out there, and people feel lost and lonely and helpless.
It does seem like the political class live in a different world from the common working or even professional person, because a lot of these diversity and inclusion things we never heard of when we were growing up. We had a lot of locker room talk, making fun of other nationalities and stuff like that growing up, and it is a lot of fun to joke about these kind of things. So we never went out and targeted someone from another nationality, really. And although, mind you, being Greek, I grew up with a lot of racism myself. I was called an N-word, believe it or not. And I was bullied at school, but I never felt like I had to go to the police and get all my classmates accused of hate crimes. We just dealt with it. And this sort of pansying the society to have the government look after stuff that you should just have to deal with yourself, stick up for yourself. It just seems like a weird agenda that the common person doesn't think of normally.
People have to learn to live in the real world. I hate that term, the real world, because the world is always real. But they have to learn to live with other people. You have to learn to live with the good and bad in society. You have to recognize the weirdo that lives up the road. You have to recognize the bully and avoid him. You have to learn when it's wise to run away. You learn those things by encountering difficulties in life. We learned very quickly at school. It was no good running home to mummy and saying, "Mummy, somebody was nasty to me at school." And mummy goes to the headmaster, and the headmaster gets the kid into the room, and the kid denies everything, and then it starts all over again. It didn't achieve anything. And what you've got now is you're creating a system in the United Kingdom where everybody thinks that they can go run into mummy, and mummy's going to take it seriously and go to the government, and the government are going to send the police down to check on your thinking. And it's not going to change anything. It's just going to send it underground. And you're going to end up with subversive movements that sit in the corner and say, "Oh, let's check the room for security. Let's make sure we're in a safe environment. Let's make sure we can't be recorded. And then let's express our opinions about binary genders." It's rather than being able to speak about it on social media, because you'll get arrested.
One thing I find confusing is we have this dichotomy where we're supporting Ukraine. We're one of the a British passport in Ukraine. People love to see British passports. They love this nation because we pretty much fulfilled a large part of the Budapest memorandum as much as we could, given that we had the state of the Ukrainian army at the time of the first invasion in 2014. But how do we have this nation which is so able to stand up for Ukraine, at the same time be so weak and washy with all this diversity stuff and wokeness?
Well, it might be a good idea to look back 2 years and say who was the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom at the time. It was Boris Johnson. And Boris Johnson was the first European leader to come out very, very strongly and say, "No, we will not have this country invaded, we will not leave them to stand alone against Russia. And that was a big shock. Now, whether you or not you agree with other things that Boris Johnson did in that particular context, he led the fight back against the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and he motivated the rest of Europe. He coordinated with the USA, and finally he got a situation where Russia has been stopped. It has been stopped, and it's lost the Black Sea. They are starting, the sanctions are having powerful effect on Russia. It's becoming more and more isolated in the international community, and a lot of positive things are happening, providing we continue to support them, especially the Americans, which they are. So how do we manage to take such a strong position? Because the whole country understands that this big bully has come along and imposed itself and invaded a country, and it's killing people for no good reason other than military conquest. We all understand that. It's very simple. But state laws have crept in gently. The use of language has been used in a very sinister manner. You know, do you want to stop people hating one another? Well, yes, I suppose I do. I don't ask you, can you? Because people are going to express their dislike and hatred for something, especially things they fear. Well, the thing that I hate, and I said in my post, was that I hate crime laws. And I made it a very, very strong point to say that I don't hate people per se, because that's a very different thing. Because you have to hate the policy, not the person. The policy is wicked. The policy is evil. The policy must be reversed and stopped. Because if we don't stop it, we're losing our freedoms. So while we're happily fighting the big bully over in Eastern Europe, the big bully's behind the door. The big bully's in the university, in the churches, in the government. It's everywhere. And we're being told, I mean, corporations are having to employ diversity and equality and inclusiveness officers to go around their company punishing people for because somebody anonymous has made an accusation about them. And I had a colleague about 18 months ago who was a high-powered banker who was suspended from work for saying that he fell off his bike because he was looking at a pretty girl. And it took him 6 months to get back into his office, anonymously. That's outrageous.
That's funny, man.
That's wrong. Yeah, I mean, the tendency for us, because of our culture, is to smile and laugh because it's so ridiculous. But we should stop smiling and laughing. We should start getting angry. We really should.
But did he actually fall off his bike? Or was he just saying that?
Yeah, he did. The reason it was noticed because he was on his way to work, and he fell off his bike on his way to work.
But it's shocking that you can put away like that. It's horrible.
And the bruise on his face was noticed. How did you get that bruise on your face? I fell off my bike because I wasn't paying attention. I was looking.
That's ridiculous, man. That is shocking. That is just pathetic, really.
But they're all pathetic. They're all pathetic. If you took all the complaints, the 8,000 complaints that have come in over the last week, except the ones against Hamza Yusuf, who are completely justified when you see the speeches that he's made. They're nearly all ridiculous. And Hamza Yusuf's first reaction to the number of complaints was that the neo-Nazis have been abusing the system. Well, what a surprise that people have abused the most ridiculous, unworkable system, that the police actually turned around and said, you shouldn't do this, it's wrong. You know, the police didn't want to do it, but now they're being forced to do it by the government. I mean, can you imagine being a police officer turning up and having to lift some 60-year-old lady, you know, on a false accusation and take her down the police station and question her just to find out that there's nothing happening. It's an outrageous waste of people's money, time, and it's controlling the population. It's stopping us thinking. It's taking away our voice. It's taking away our rights. And people are just sitting back and letting it happen. Well, it's time to get angry. It's not time to start hoping that somebody else like Alex Salmond's going to come in and change the situation, because he isn't. He's part of the problem as well. Keir Starmer isn't going to come in and change the situation. He's going to hope it goes away or slides under the carpet. Nobody's going to change it until the people get angry. And change creates conflict, and conflict creates change. And it's time for the British people en masse to start standing up and marching in the street and pretending they're Palestinians and start doing something, because the police won't arrest them, will they?
I think what I'll do is I'll send this podcast to my local councillor here, MP. But we need to nip this in the bud, because we'll just get this thing will just start and grow, and the government never gives back their power, really. Look at COVID, how we just let ourselves be locked down, and look how much damage that's caused. So, yeah, I encourage everyone watching to make a stand, make your voice heard to your MP. If they don't write back to you, then escalate it. Make a post about how you were ignored, because we need to take back our country from these stupid laws.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter how. Don't send emails. Emails are a waste of time for MPs. They just go to a secretary and they get deleted. But anything in writing has to be responded to. Everything in writing has to be responded to. When I was running the Northern Ireland Veterans Campaign, I had a letter writing campaign where we sent 10,000 letters to the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland complaining about Barra McGrory, the Sinn Féin barrister who'd become Director of Public Prosecutions. And we got him to resign. We got him to step down from his position because of his bias. Letter writing. So if you're in a local rugby club, get the people in your local rugby club who have been complaining, agreeing with you. Go around with the envelopes, write the letters for them and say, put your signature on that and put it in an envelope and post it. Get the people in your local coffee shop, get the people in any small group of community people that you belong to write in and say, this is outrageous, this has got to stop. But the other thing that we need in Britain, we need in England, we need in Wales, we need in Scotland, is we need some kind of third party that's going to threaten the seats of these people, because that's what really counts to them, being in power. They're not in politics to help people. They're in politics to obtain power. That's what they really want to be there for, and nothing else.
Yeah, I don't understand this voting system where you have like a binary 100% or zero everybody else. You should have a sort of weighted scale. So you pick maybe second choice, the party that you know will get in power, or the one or the two options, but then you also put your first choice to the person that you want that's maybe a third party that they would never get a chance to get anywhere. I don't understand this. It's basically a uniparty system. You get into politics, you're one of those big parties, Labour or Conservatives, and you got half a chance of getting in power.
Yeah. Well, first past the post seems to be the best of a bad system, and getting people in position. But I think there should be more opportunity for independence. There should be more access for people to run. But to run as an independent, you need to pay your own way, and it's quite expensive. And so you're putting yourself out there, facing up to large, well-funded groups like Labour and the Conservatives, SNP, and so on, where the people they put forward don't have to fund their own campaigns. And so that makes it a hell of a lot more difficult for somebody to run as an independent. Maybe there should be some kind of funding for people who pass certain categories to run as independents, so that they can get their voice in there as well. I don't know. It's difficult, but at the moment we end up with extremists in power, who are carrying the balance of power, especially in a coalition government, as you've got in Scotland.
So the last time I made a little joke about Robin Horsfall for Prime Minister, but I've seen in response to your last post a few more calls for you to get into politics. So has there been any adjustment in your attitude towards getting into politics?
Yeah, it's the only thing that's tough for me is that I had bladder cancer 6 years ago, and my health goes up and down with the weather, and so I'm quite vulnerable. And when you're sick or when you're run down, it's very hard to maintain the energy required to bang the table and deal with the cut and thrust of politics. I did it for 8 years with the Northern Ireland Veterans Campaign, and I found that it wasn't the sabres of my enemies, but the daggers of my friends that were the biggest problem. Politics is a horrible, nasty aspect of human nature. It's really a young man's job, and it's certainly a fit man's job. And I'm prepared to support somebody. I'm prepared to speak out for somebody, turn up. But to take on the mantle of leader again, I don't think it would. I don't think it would enhance my longevity. I think it would probably finish me off earlier.
Well, I guess regardless, you're making a massive influence still on LinkedIn because if you think about how many men you'll inspire to take action on some of your posts, if 1 million people see those posts, whether it's over 1 or 2 weeks, then that's a huge effect, possibly greater than a politician going on TV and dodging questions for half an hour or something like that.
Yeah, I wish I could get out there more. I would get out there more. It just there's a lack of coordination. There's a huge, vast number of people that feel exactly the same way, and nobody is latching into that and saying the majority don't want this. The majority don't want this either. Everything's being done with populist nonsense. People are living in soundbite worlds where they say, "Oh, Brexit's going to save us 32 billion a year. We'll all be better off." Oh yeah, let's have a look at that again. It's you're being sold something. Everything's being marketed to you to market to you to give them your votes and your money. They're not actually treating people with any decency and respect in terms of the things that really, really matter. These hate crime laws really, really matter. I hate them because I'm frightened of them. And we all hate what we fear. Well, we should be frightened of these things. They're dangerous, they're insidious, they're sinister, and they're undermining our freedoms while we're, as you so rightly said, standing up against the oppressive behavior of Vladimir Putin. We're allowing the oppressive behavior of our own governments to do the same thing underneath the table here in our own country.
So when you say there's a lack of coordination, I get that because I understand that around me there's quite a lot of anger towards some of these laws. But then again, like I said, people just get angry and don't do anything with it. So what would you advise to help fix that lack of coordination?
Well, I think we need people with confidence to stand up and give it a go. We need people who the enemy will turn around to you straight away and say, well, who elected you? Who gave you the right to stand up? I didn't. And they'll try to pull you down that way. It happened to me a lot. Put yourself up there above the parapet, but you're going to have to be prepared to take the gunfire when you do. And you're going to have to stand up there and believe that, the vast majority of the people are behind you. The vast majority of the people run for local office, run for local council, run for, or start to actually go and talk to your MPs and bang the table and say, this is not good enough. You're not doing anything. We want to know why you're not doing anything about this, and getting in their faces. But as I say, most of the moderate moral majority are worrying about their kids going to school, worrying about paying the bills, worrying about paying the car tax, worrying about next week, their summer holidays or whatever. And they're hoping that politicians will deal with these problems for them, but they're not. You've got the wrong politicians in the wrong place with the wrong policies. People have got to stand up. Leaders, it used to be that the best educated retired people would take on politics later on in their life. They would start to take it on, and they would start to say they had experience in business, experience in war, experience in the military, experience in all sorts of things. And then they'd come along in their 50s and start to say, right, now I'm going to stand for office. I'm going to start doing something. But where are they now? I'm not sure where they are. I wish I did. All these wonderful people that are out there are sitting at home with their dogs and their pensions and hoping that it'll go away. Well, that's what the best educated and the most moderate people in Nazi Germany did in the 1930s, and it didn't go away. It didn't go away, and it won't go away.
I think that success, which normally people that are highly educated and that those people that have the potential to lead, resistance against bad laws, the thing is their lives become so comfortable due to their success that they've got too much to lose. So you almost need to find people that have that intelligence and yet have suffered a lot in life. But yeah, it's a sort of like chicken and egg thing, you know.
Yeah, I mean, if people don't stand up for themselves against the bullies now, then in another generation, our children are going to have to have a revolution. Our children are going to have to revolt. They're going to have to rise up against the governments as they will become, because they will become Stalinist. They will become Nazis. They will become authoritarian. They will become oppressive. They're already becoming oppressive. And people have got to open their eyes and realize that you cannot keep turning away from it and hoping that it'll be all right next week. You cannot. Everybody has got to start taking some form of risk. And if the risk is getting taken down to your local police station for a non-criminal hate crime, then it's a risk worth taking. It's a risk worth speaking out about. You know, you can be arrested. There have been people arrested in Leeds in the United Kingdom for simply standing up and preaching the gospel through a speaker, for stating that men and women are different, you know, and that the gender in mammals is binary, and arrested for it and taken to court and found guilty, and then had it thrown out in the High Court. How many of us can afford to do that? How many of us can afford to go to magistrates' court, be found guilty, appeal, and then take it to a High Court? Not many. This person in particular had the support of his church and the money that his church was prepared to put behind the campaign. It affects us all. It affects us all. When I was at university, I was how old was I? 56 years old. I went to university as an undergraduate in Surrey, and I was having lectures about which was supposed to be about Shakespeare, and they were about female genital mutilation instead in the first 10 minutes. Now, I complained. I said, I'm not paying for this. I'm paying to learn Shakespeare. I had English literature lessons where I was getting introduced to in English literature. I was getting introduced to Derrida, French philosophers that were communists. I was getting introduced to people who had nothing to do with English literature. I was getting pressed for use of certain words, certain adjectives that were considered to be unacceptable by the university because they didn't fit the agenda that they had in terms of political correctness. You know, and that's going on. And those people in university now who are 20, 25, they're going to be the people that are running for government in 20 years' time or 10 years' time. And they're being indoctrinated right there, right now, while we speak. Fortunately, it was a bit harder to indoctrinate me.
Yeah, power in many cases corrupts. So these people, they get a taste of their ideology, religion, or whatever you want to call it, wokeness, and people having to specify certain genders or speak to them in a certain way. For them, it can be a sort of like a drug, and yeah, it's a very dangerous people, especially even if they have a sort of good ideals at the start. Once they get a taste of that power, you never know what power will do to you until you experience it. I mean, I once, before Brexit, I was invited by Daniel Hannan to go over to the European Parliament in Strasbourg and just to sort of learn what it was all about. And we had a sort of, I guess, indoctrination from both sides about how like Brexit would be good, and you know, and they got sort of people from the European Parliament were sort of also lecturing us about how good the European Union is. But just being around that atmosphere, you get a sort of aloofness. You know, you walk inside this big building through security, and it's like a club. You know, like you don't even pay taxes if you're a European MP. So it's difficult.
Yeah, it's very easy for people to get trapped into a particular group where everybody agrees with you, nobody disagrees with you. And what's happening is those groups are now oppressing anybody that does disagree with them. They're taking away their voice. The greatest power of the hate crime laws are not to stop people bullying each other or being unkind to each other or hurting each other or even being racially or ageist or gender prejudiced. What they are designed to do is take away the voice of opposition. That's what they're really designed to do. Anybody that disagrees with our process can be arrested, can be questioned, even on an anonymous accusation. And that means that the police, anybody can phone up the police, make an anonymous accusation about you, and have you silenced without any evidence whatsoever, and warned that if you say these things again, or even think these things again, you will be punished. So that's a power motive. It's got nothing to do with equality. It's got nothing to do with diversity or inclusiveness. It has everything to do with controlling the majority and preventing them from speaking out, so that a certain group of people in power, in government, can keep you from presenting any form of opposition whatsoever. And it's already happening now.
You can imagine how like enemies of our nation could use that against influencers. You can imagine like some undercover Russian spy trying to take down pro-Ukrainian leaders with some kind of like hate speech laws. It's just a can of worms, man.
Well, I mean, the foreign governments and our own governments as well already use propaganda to undermine their enemies, their opponents. They do that, and they do it all the time. And of course, in the Western world especially, it's not a crime to tell a lie. And so they can hide behind that, and they can tell as many lies as they want, and they say, well, I know it's a lie, but, I've got enough people to believe it in order to vote for me, because we live in a soundbite society where the headline gets read, but not the actual article. So we've got people who are weaponizing media all the time. It happens every single day. And, as you said at the beginning, I had 1.5 million people follow me on LinkedIn. And then people started to say, I haven't heard from you for a week or two. And I said, well, I've been posting every day. So something's happening. And what I imagine, and I could be wrong, is that coordinated groups who can afford to run troll farms are actually simply clicking on complaints constantly to reduce the level of coverage that I actually have. But I'll find my way around it. I'll find new outlets. I'm going to expand my webpage, get people coming onto my vlogs on there in the future. I'm going to set up a YouTube channel, and so if I can't go through them, I'll go around them. I'll get there.
Yeah, maybe you can have somebody help you with like a studio or something like that. Like, could you volunteer just like an hour to get guests in? I think actually you could have a great podcast if it's just production. It's like hard to get good production on a when you're just starting out, But because video podcasts only go so far. There's only so far I can take this podcast with just doing Zoom calls or Zencastr calls. Yeah. Because there's like a lag there. There's like not a, you can't go out for a beer beforehand, or a whatever you want, Chinese. I was going to say something else there.
Yeah. And again, you see, there's you actually, it's funny. It is funny, but there's you actually controlling your speech all of a sudden.
Man.
Oh.
This was like on the edge 20 years ago, saying.
I used to have a joke that was my party piece, and I used to tell it in a US Southern States accent, which could easily be mistaken for a US Southern States colored, black accent. Whichever. Either me doing it, you see, colored, black. Oh, which one should it be? Accent. And somebody in London once suggested that I was being racist, so I said, well, okay, I'll tell it with a Yorkshire accent then, shall I? And so I told it with a Yorkshire accent after that, and it was fine, What's the difference? There is no difference. There's no such thing as reverse discrimination. Discrimination is exactly the same in forward gear as it is in reverse gear. It's discrimination. Somebody puts the word reverse in there, and it seems to justify discrimination. It's insanity. We're living in an absolute world of insanity, and anybody challenges that insanity is accused of not understanding, of not being a decent person, of being immediately is attached to the extreme right or the extreme left. Jordan Peterson is accused of being both. it's and I've been accused of being both now. So I'm catching up with him. Bless him.
So on your LinkedIn post, you said, "I hate the term reverse discrimination. It's a false premise. Discrimination is the same forward and reverse." That's a bit over my head. Reverse discrimination. What does that actually mean?
Well, it means that we can discriminate against white people joining the RAF,
Right.
so that we can equalise the numbers in the RAF on behalf of people who are less qualified. And that's just one example. It's happened in the police force. It's happened in companies. So what you end up with is a situation where people who are less qualified are getting jobs because of their natural characteristics. Now, discrimination is supposed to be to stop that, but all they've done is switch it round to the other side, which again is you cannot call it anything but discrimination. The breaking the laws, they're supposed to be making laws to prevent. It doesn't make any logical sense, and the people that are following it and advocating it are either doing it because they want to weaponize it or because it's just a belief system that they've been indoctrinated into, and they can't step outside and look at how crazy they're behaving.
So if you look at somewhere like the United Nations, they are not under pressure to perform financially because it's money that comes from taxpayers, right? So, but they have this whole diversity inclusion thing there. So you basically have like these quotas, and then when you have no profit motive for efficiency, then you can really get underqualified people, and it's just a waste of money sometimes. There are some good parts of
It is.
the UN, but like it's just a lot of it is yeah.
I mean, you've got the fashion industry, for example. The fashion industry bought into the idea that larger people would be a good idea to sell their clothes, and in fact, in many ways, I thought it was a very good idea too. Because people aren't size 10 on average; they're usually size 14 or 16 on average these days, especially in the female world. And yet, the fashion companies have started to change that because they weren't selling as much product, because people want to see people they visually regard as more attractive wearing the clothes that they want to buy. So they've changed that. And as I say, I'm all for larger people, fashion, and everything else, and being in the pictures. I'm all for that. But financially, it hasn't worked for the fashion industry, so they're changing it back.
Like if I want to go buy a new Under Armour T-shirt or a new leather jacket, I'm going to go on Amazon. I don't want to see some gamer with a Big Mac, with his leather jacket or T-shirt. It's just I'm not going to go buy it. I want to see something that I can maybe aspire to. It'll fit me if I get in shape more, and we can all do more exercise. So I think it's quite a good thing to sort of promote healthy living. I'm not talking about being like super cut, and just like a normally healthy person is a good idea.
Yeah, it really is. So in spite of all these great ideas, some of them extremely well intentioned, when it comes to the financial world, we find it doesn't work. It doesn't sell, and so and corporations don't like that. It's a bit like buying a perfume that doesn't smell good. You're not going to buy it, no matter how well intentioned it is. It's got to smell good, and in terms of fashion, it's got to look good.
So for your YouTube, are you going to be doing like interviews or other topics?
Yeah, I think I've got to start with what I can afford to do. So set up a studio in my roof bedroom, and get the lights right, get the material right, get the equipment right, get a couple of friends in who are far more qualified with IT to help me set the program up. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do is set up a vlog system on on my webpage, robinhorsfall.co.uk, and I'm going to start putting out my daily vlogs there, because at least they can't restrict the coverage from my webpage, and encourage people to go there to listen to what I've got to say. And of course, I will also try to continue sharing on social media. I'll try writing more for the press, and keep letting my fingers and my brain do the work, and my mouth do the talking. And that's my way of stepping above the parapet and try to encourage other people to do the same. You do what you can do, not what you can't do. So, but give it a try.
I think the voice of the working class person is quite powerful. Like, so if you think of a lot of those men that are speaking up on your LinkedIn posts, especially that one where you says you hate the hate speech laws, you could imagine maybe gathering a bunch of them together in some venue and just having them all talk on what they think, and just getting those sent off to the local MPs and stuff like that. That could be quite powerful, because then you have the consensus there.
There's an awful lot of women that respond and follow me as well. So just wanted to qualify that. But again, with people like me who are motivated, who are prepared to put themselves above the parapet and get shot at, if I can create a situation, which is something I'm working on, where I can get enough funding to go out and stand in front of people and talk to people and have tomatoes thrown at me, then I'll do it. And I would. The first thing that would probably happen in if I went up to Scotland, and I will be there later this year in September, is the thought police will be around to lift me. But that'll be a badge worth wearing.
I'll be there to standing outside your cell, doing some YouTube videos if that happens.
Well, I'll get J.K. Rowling to give me a hand financially, and we'll see where it goes from there.
In a sense, your career fighting, terrorists and like being in the SAS and dealing with serious health issues is sort of almost like a good preparation for dealing with the thought police,
Yeah, I think more than that, not so much the military stuff, but having been a bullied kid, having been isolated, having been cut off from your peer group, having been almost beaten to death by two people who did it simply because they were drunk. Those are the foundations that actually make me want to stand up against any form of oppression, against any kind of anything that I perceive as bullying, because oppression and bullying are one and the same thing. I think those are the things, rather than my illustrious career with the military, which was only 12 years of my 67-year life. So yeah, those are the things that really count.
Well, Robin, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, I think for the fourth time now, and it's always exciting to see what you're doing, buddy.
Well, we'll keep banging the drum, and hopefully eventually we'll get people to join in and play their drums too.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining the podcast again, and thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you again shortly on the Nikos show.
Okay, and don't forget, you can get me at robinhorsfall.com.
Absolutely.